And our ANC Youth League President Colin Maine joins us over the phone line, as well as in studio we have Professor Sipho Siepe, political analyst, and Andile Mngxitama, BLF convener, and they join us in studio. A very good evening to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening.
And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Siepe. What do you make of the distortion of facts on the ANC Youth League march to ABSA?
Well, this is what defines South African media. This is one good example. And there are elements of hypocrisy. The first one is the most obvious one of trying to downplay the numbers. Because what you have here is that you have a crime committed by white people. And even the way it is covered, there's an attempt to use black people to try to sanitize. When the report came, and nobody has disputed the fact that the money was given illegally and it was also irregular. And instead of the usual suspects, the foundations, starting from the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Freedom Under Law, the Helen Suzman Foundations and the foundation, making a lot of noise around this matter. What we have been greeted with is deafening silence, because what you have is you have a white person in the dock. So that's the first thing that we need to deal with. But the distortion also owes itself from the fact that most of the media derives its position from the Verwoerdian prescription that almost starts with doubting black people. So even you find, even when we have black people working in there, the script is already written. Actually, I would like to quote what Mandela himself said when he was the president of the ANC and of the country. He says, the bulk of the mass media in our country has set itself up as a force opposed to the ANC. This media exploits the dominant position it achieved as a result of apartheid system to campaign against both the real and the real agents of change, as represented by our movement led by the ANC. This is what Mandela said, and you will never hear this thing quoted, because he also observed the anti-black stance, anti-worker stance. So the distortion is something that one must also understand. If it was a black person, the reports and this real suspect will be making a lot of noise about black corruption. And even then, when you have the darling of the media, take, for instance, a case that has now been resolved, where the former public protector she has agreed to pay back the money. But and she talks about ethics. The question that the media is not raising is that where were these ethics 3 years ago? And all this time when there was pay back the money, when you know yourself that you're not clean. But you find, because you had become a demigod of the anti-black stance, you don't hear these people saying, where's your conscience? And where was this conscience all along when you were calling for others? But you can see the bias that there's always the black people who will be selected and who will be almost given platforms to campaign against their own. And you also have the media outlets that will recycle some of these black people. I mean, if you take, for instance, the so-called Save South Africa, and you take the coverage of people like Sipho Bichane, you would actually think that this is a person who represents a majority, and he'll be speaking as saying, I speak on behalf of South Africans. And you find the media not questioning that, even when these people cannot even fill a cathedral. And then you have parties that can fill stadiums, whether it's in Polokwane, whether it's in Bombela, whether it's in Mafikeng, and yet the presentation will be, these are the people who do not represent the people of this country. So the distortions are what defines this media. And one of the editors, just one last sentence, and a former editor of The Citizen says, the reason most of our paper appears to be anti-ANC is because most of our papers are written for those who happen to be anti-ANC. Many of us in the media bemoan the fact that South Africa appears to be filled with unsophisticated masses who don't know what is being written about their daily lives. So this is an editor who himself had come forth to say, this is what I've also participated in. So the issue here is not so much about shielding the ANC. I think the ANC has its own weaknesses and it must be criticized ruthlessly. But we must not turn a blind eye to the bias that is anti-black and anti-poor that defines the media. So this is one example of that distortion.
Now, we're also joined by Colin Maine, and he joins us over the phone line. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Can you confirm if it was more than 300 members or 1,000, more than 1,000 members?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. You know, I'm sure we've got blind people in the media, so it can't be our problem. We're not doctors. If News 24 has got blind journalists, really they need medical attention. We can confirm that we had more than 20,000 members of the Youth League marching with us yesterday to the ABSA head office. But it is a kind of media we have in South Africa. The example that the Prophet is making there of Tulima Donzela. Tulima Donzela says to us, the Uda General has cleared her. It's quite a stupid determination by the Auditor General. Because when you are given a car, for instance, I was an MEC, if my son or my daughter takes the car, I must take responsibility. So Tulima Donzela was supposed to take responsibility long time ago. That clearance by the AG, but also AG, it also says to me that the AG is part of these enemies of the revolution.
And now, are you expecting an apology to come from News 24 about these facts that they have distorted?
Well, we don't want their apology. We don't need News 24 to pursue our struggle. We are going to intensify war against monopoly capital. And actually, we do not even expect them to cover us anyway. But for us, it's not about coverage. It's about what we stand for and what we do for South Africans. So that generations to come must know that there was this youth league that stood and raised these issues. It's not only this one. Their friends must know. In the mining sector, next week we are going back to them. JSE, we are coming. We gave them a memorandum in 2011. They have not responded to us. So we are coming. We are going back. The onslaught is on monopoly capital. So who owns these newspapers? NASPAS. Who's NASPAS? What does it represent? We all know.
And now, Colin Maine, we understand that you have given ABSA 21 days to respond. If they do not respond within the 21 days, what will happen from then onwards?
Well, we said to ABSA that when we come back, it will not be peaceful. What we also emphasize is that generations that came before us, they said freedom or death. Now, our clarion call or our generational mission is economic freedom in our lifetime. So we are saying we achieve that or death, and we know that we will win.
All right, thank you very much, Colin Maine. We're also joined in studio by Andile Mngxitama, BLF convener. And now we understand that on Twitter, you had put on something that says Rupert-owned media rewriting events, as always, 300 really. What was currently going on in your mind when you were formulating this tweet?
I think firstly we need to congratulate the ANC Youth League for a very successful march, and I think I agree with the president of the Youth League who says probably 20,000 people. And I know if this march was organized by what we call London-controlled regime change agents who have become the darling of the media, they would have said there were 30,000 people there. But because this march was organized to get justice for black people against white media, they are distorting it at these levels. What is shocking is that the lies told by the South African media is never reported by other media. For instance, there's not going to be a headline tomorrow that says News 24 lies about the number of people in the ANC Youth March. It shows that the media is law unto itself, but also it is a good example about why you should not trust white-owned media. It is a propaganda to basically misinform you. and to tell you who the enemy is, instead of actually you making up your mind about the fact that South Africa remains white-owned and there's racism, and in fact our economy is still in the hands of those who own the media. So this is a clear, blatant lies, and I agree that there's no need to even ask for apology. What we need to do is to have our own media, to tell our own story, but to intensify the battle. We are in the middle of a war in South Africa now. This struggle is for resolving the large questions of economic liberation. White minority owns South Africa's economy, it owns the media, it is under pressure by calls now to finally settle the question of who owns South Africa. ABSA and others have stolen from the Reserve Bank. There's enough evidence of this, and we are saying ABSA must pay back the money. The president of this country was said to have misused money, and everybody was saying Zuma must pay back the money. The president has paid back the money. ABSA up to now, even of their spokesperson, they are still denying that in fact they've stolen this money. So what we're going to do ourselves as BLF is to also be part of these marches. In fact, next week, Friday, we're going to the Reserve Bank, because the Reserve Bank, again, including those who were there at the time, Thabo Mbeki, Tito Mboweni, Trevor Manuel, are protecting white capital. And the worst thing, in our view, is the current Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, who has shares in ABSA, and coming out saying that ABSA should not pay back this money. He's there to protect white monopoly capital. He was there and appointed by white monopoly capital, and particularly these banks. So our march to the Reserve Bank, ourselves, is going to say the Reserve Bank is there to take care of the interests of our people and hasn't. And then to call for the president of the country to release Pravin Gordhan. He is conflicted, he is captured, and in fact, he's unable to perform his functions as a minister. He's only there to protect white capital. With ABSA, we must make it sure that it's not business as usual. We are going to intensify the struggle. We will be supporting the ANC Youth League after the 21 days they have put, but ourselves, we think in certain days of the week, we're going to make sure that ABSA is shut down if it does not come forward and pay back this money.
I hear you saying that you will be also supporting this whole 21 days, as Colin Maine has said that after the 21 days and ABSA does not respond, this will not be peaceful. Are you also in the same boat that it will not be peaceful?
We're going to make sure that ABSA does not trade as usual. It can't be business as usual. I mean, ABSA is stolen from our people. It is denying, it is arrogant, and we know that there's not just ABSA, South African white capital is benefiting, but also Barclays, so the London-based Barclays who stole also benefited from this theft. What of course we are also aware, and has been exposed by this draft preliminary report by the public protector, is organizations that said, such as the Economic Freedom Fighters, they're going to occupy ABSA. They went to London and come back. Now they don't want to be part of this struggle because they're in the pockets of white monopoly capital. This matter has now been clear. There are those of us who want change and those who are making sure that change does not happen, and those are the darlings of the white media. And this distortion, it is there to make sure, in fact, that those who are fighting are being vilified. The Youth League was said to have been dead. So that lie is the lie they want to perpetuate, and that is why they will not be able to tell the truth. More than 20,000 people are there. They'll say, no, it's less than 300 people.
And now coming back to you, Professor, we understand that the FF has said that they will not be participating, as they did bring this up, that in January they will not be participating together with the BLF and whoever else, as well as the Guptas. What is your take on that?
Well, I think South Africans need to demand consistency. I mean, we've had 2 years by the media in this country distorting what had happened in Gandla. They talk about how the president had spent 246 million, while they know full well that most of the money was lost through people who took advantage of the project. This is why ultimately the Auditor General and the Minister of Finance came with a small amount of about 7.8 that the president had to pay. But what we are saying is, if there are billions that we know had been taken, it does make sense for us to show the same sense of demand and agency and demand social justice, that we cannot say when people have taken or 200 million has been lost, we keep silent. Look at the DA. They're very silent on this matter. And you have to ask why. But I also would want to see why is the ANC itself silent? Because it's good that the Youth League has taken a stand. But we would like people of this country who are saying we are against corruption and that there's money that has been taken away from the fiscus. Let that money be returned and also be returned in interest.
And now, Andile Mngxitama, you did go approach the EFF to ask them to join you in this fight. Did you ever try thinking about joining the DA, who has been so silent about this ABSA stance?
Well, the DA is blatantly part of the white monopoly capital, and in fact we went to EFF because EFF had said is going to occupy ABSA. In fact, the president of EFF, Julius Malema, was very clear. He gave, in fact, the time frame. He said, next year we start with ABSA. Next year is 2016. So we're still waiting. Of course, he went to London, as we know, and he got instructions to work with the DA, and now they are not going to do so. What we have done, something that I think in this conversation is missing, is the fact that this money we're talking about from ABSA was unlawfully taken from the Reserve Bank. All the investigations say so. BLF has opened a criminal case against including ABSA, Johan Rupert, and others who benefited from the theft of 26 billion from the South African Reserve Bank. So their denial to pay back the money is not going to save them, because there is also the criminal matter. And yesterday we got a communication from the police to say they are in fact investigating this criminal matter that relates to the 26 billion. And the name of Maria Ramos, we've put it up there as one of the people that must be actually investigated for also lying. Trevor Manuel, Tito Mboweni, Thabo Mbeki, we have mentioned them also to the police, but only as state witnesses. We're saying to them they must come forth, tell the truth, and in fact, if they have any integrity, they must insist that ABSA pay back the money. But they haven't done so. They have, unfortunately, in our view, protected ABSA. But the struggle of our people, we are absolutely happy as BLF. Some of us spent 8 days in jail. When we went to the former public protector, who again, through this media, the truth is told about her. She is now being employed at the University of Stellenbosch, which, of course, have a chancellor, the man called Johan Rupert. She has refused to investigate Johan Rupert. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about the fact that, in fact, she has herself lied about how the car her son used, and now she's paying back the money. But it's not only that lie. I just want to conclude another big lie told by the media. All of a sudden, if you go to the Sunday Times richest list, the two families that control South Africa, the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers, have been removed. If you look at the top 10, they are not there. All of a sudden, their wealth has been hidden. And this you would have thought would be the biggest news, that South African media is hiding the wealth that we know has been stolen and created out of land dispossession, colonialism and apartheid by these two families, but it's not there. So we now know the South African media is just a propaganda arm of white monopoly capital. Any black person who believes South African media, white-owned media, is misinforming themselves.
And now, Mr. Professor Seope, Andile Mngxitama has spoken about the wealth of the two families that has been hidden. What's your take on that?
Well, I think I do not want to begrudge people for their wealth, but what he's pointing out is really the misinformation. Everybody knows in this country that these families are some of the richest. And if suddenly they disappear, there must be an explanation. Either they've taken the money out or they've decided to be poor and they've given it away. But we know that has not happened. So it is a part of the shielding of certain groupings, because many of our people are in their pockets. So, but what is most important is that at least the young people in this country are saying we are not going to take it lying down. And in a sense, what goes around comes around. It was the same media that was hunting and hounding certain people. The young people are saying, we expect you to do the same thing. It doesn't matter how many black puppets they would actually use. But what they are also saying is that some of these black puppets who talk a lot about corruption, where are they today? You don't even hear them saying, we do not want to make a judgment, but let there be a commission of inquiry that will look into this matter. Instead, because they are being handled, they are very silent. And you also have some of the media in this country who will try to promote them, but they will be about talking about other things so that this matter of ABSA does not go away. But in the same way that the Thuli Madonsela tried to move out of this matter of the car, it was also the same young people who went out to say, you will pay back. And some media, at least, made a big deal about it. And ultimately, after accusing the president, where she was diverting attention from herself, because she knew that it would be something that the media will want, she has considered that she should have handled this matter properly. But the point is, if she talks about morality and ethics, where was morality and ethics in the last 3 years when this matter happened?
And now, Mngxitama, who else are you expecting to join the fight of hashtag ABSA Pay Back the Money?
We are calling on the churches, we're calling on the political parties, we're calling on all South Africans who want real justice to be part of this call. And we call them also to come out Friday when you go to the Reserve Bank in Pretoria to demand that there must be justice. But if you were to just come back on the issue of the media, how the language they use, you know, if it was someone else, it was not Thuli Madonsela, if it was someone else, they hate, they want out, they would have said criminal, Thuli Madonsela the criminal. But they wouldn't say that. They are silent because it is their person who have served them well, who would have protected them. So what we are saying is we need to come to a point where the South African media somehow is more objective. Right now it isn't. Right now the South African media is white-owned and it only speaks the truth of whiteness. It does not, it distort anything that's got to do with the truth that project white capital for what it is. Mass murderers, thieves who have not come forward, even in the TRC, they have not paid reparations, and the death of our people in the mines continues up to today. These things are not part of the media expose because our South African media is white-owned. I think this challenge means that we need black media. We need more militant media as far as the truth is concerned, and in this way some truth can come out. Otherwise, we're sitting with a situation where we are being deliberately misinformed, and when you buy newspapers white-owned, you're wasting your money in misinforming yourself because there's no truth there. Tomorrow there will be no headlines that talks about, in fact, this big march of the ANC Youth League and what is it about. The fact that money was stolen and this money benefited white people and white monopoly capital.
And now I'm getting here that News 24 has apologized for this. And what do you make, as you, as well as Colin Maine, had said that you don't want any apology from them, but they came out and they apologized?
Well, damage is done. That's what they'll do. And of course, they will write a little apology. They'll generally distort, they will vilify, and then they'll write a very small... how could anyone, where was the editor? Where were the sub-editors? How could anyone look at these images and say that it was less than 300 people? It was a deliberate, systemic part of lying, distorting the truth to project a particular picture so that you defend a white capital. What we would have loved to see was a headline that says, ABSA must pay back the money. The criminal ABSA, which is involved in our view in unlawful activities, must now pay back that money, but they're not going to do so. So I don't accept their apology. It is a little bit too late and too little.
And what do you make of the apology that has come from News 24?
Well, if the Youth League had not gone to the street, if other groups like the BLF had not raised noise, this matter would have been history as it's written. But what is most important is they are being exposed. We have young people who are more vigilant. And these young people are also raising fundamental issues of transformation. They are saying, let us also talk about the things that matter. So the reason that why you have this suppression of information is because we have entered the phase of transition to dealing with economic transformation. If it was about reconciliation, the media would be out there. But what has happened in the last 22 years is that they've allowed us to talk about all other things except the issues of land, except the issues of the economy, except about who writes a story. But the question must also go back to the ANC. Young people today are not even reading books like I Write What I Like. They are not reading books that are written by black people. Even the book like The Long Walk to Freedom, you find that you have universities that name themselves after Mandela. If you ask them, have you read, do you expect your students to read the book? They don't. But what they will do, they'll allow you to participate in this Mickey Mouse thing that happens called the Mandela Day, where people are going to clean and pick up papers and all that. The Mandela was a revolutionary, so he needs to be presented as somebody who fought against white supremacy. And what I would like to see on those days is that the young people's minds must be cleaned from this white supremacy. They need to read. On that day, I'll be much more happier if they were to read his statement on the dock during the Rivonia trial than to be picking up papers. Picking up papers is something that we need to do all the time. But what the white media will do, they will promote this as a way of trivializing the legacy of Mandela, as to remove the revolutionary from him and present him as simply a teddy bear. And this is what they have succeeded. And unfortunately, parties have also joined in the trivialization of Mandela and the distortion of history. The struggle in this country was about land, was about the economy. And what the president said during the State of the Nation address, to say it would be inconceivable for a liberation movement not to include economic liberation as key, but also most importantly to say the wealth of this country must be returned to the people of this country as a whole.
Professor, I'm just going to hold you there and read out this tweet from Adrian Basson, and he has said that on Friday at News 24 incorrectly reported that over 300 ANC Youth League members marched on APSA in Johannesburg. This was not News 24. And let's look at some of the messages coming in also. No wonder why Mguptana is muffling. Okay, all right, we won't read some of those as well, but looking at the way they have come out and said that we apologize, it was incorrectly written, the way they handled this kind of news, now it's turned into several thousand instead of saying more than 300 people.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, you would have thought, given the numbers, this would have been the biggest story. It has not been the biggest story. That tells you. So you can quibble about the numbers, whether it's 250,000 or whether it's 40,000, whether it's 20,000 and all that. But if you look at the pictures, newspapers would have been interested in talking to those young people in the same way that they are willing to talk to people who are in the cathedral. One of the media stations, when the ANC had held its NEC meeting, was paying attention to 20 people who were outside protesting, interviewing those people for the whole day, while at the same time the ANC Youth League was hosting a stadium filled to capacity in the Free State. But they were more concerned about these 20 people who are anti-ANC. So this is what you find as a distortion. So one welcomes the fact that they've been sufficiently embarrassed to say we made a mistake and to start attributing blame to other people. But what is most important is, why have you not given voice to those young people? Why have you not made it a big story that you have so many young people in this country represented by this organization? And you should also assume that they might be representing quite a large number of young people. That this would be, given that it is a youthful country, we would have paid attention to what they are saying and why in particular on this matter. So that those questions have not been raised. So to simply apologize, as Andila says, it is a bit too late. But also the coverage has been so poor to show that it was also intentional to belittle the effort by young people in this country.
And I also know that the ANC Youth League, as well as Andile, has also said that they have urged President Zuma to fire ministers who are against transformation agenda. What do you make of the statement? Will it be possible that he could fire ministers who are against transformation?
Well, I mean, the president has a prerogative to invite in his cabinet people who are going to assist him. And this is a constitutional right. So it is up to him to exercise it. But you must also understand that the ANC works in the form of a collective, or they've actually keep on referring to the notion of a collective, which is actually correct. But the question is that if you have people in your team who are going in the opposite direction and you're going that way, then you are not going to achieve your own agenda. So the issues that are being raised, organizations have a right to say, in the same way that we have an organization that says we are going to be judging and evaluating and assessing performance of ministers. Organizations are also making a statement that we are also assessing certain ministers, and we think that they're not working or listening to the same beat that the president is actually putting across. So that is an issue that the ANC itself must address. But I think the ANC has a problem, because the ANC is also a mess of contradictions. When you have a different ideological strands, they are bound to collide. And what we see here is a collision which might lead to an implosion. And it's very important for them to understand that sometimes it is better for you to let go of certain people. In the same way that the EFF could not sit comfortably within the ANC. It had to go. Some members of the COPE had to go. So the ANC needs to address these internal contradictions that it faces. Otherwise, there will never be progress. You'll have the president saying these are the marching orders, but within that space, there'll be other people who will be putting in a different direction.
And now we're joined by ANC Youth League President Colin Maine. We know that you did mention that you don't want any kind of apology coming from News 24, but we know that they have sent out something on Twitter, and they have said that incorrectly reported that over 300 ANC Youth League members marched. Now they have changed it to several thousand. How do you feel about that?
No, let me just, before I go there, just say to the Prof that the Prof is right on the issues raised. But the President of the ANC and of government will communicate certain things, and there are people within his cabinet who will then say things that are contrary to what the President is pronouncing. But we must just say to Prof that every epoch has got its traitors. Now, there are also traitors in government and as the Youth League who are agreeing that the President must get rid of them. Now, as for the apology that comes from News 24, really, well, they have written the story, they have apologized. We don't take that apology. We don't need them for us to pursue our struggle. This for us is not a beauty contest. We don't want to be seen in newspapers or News 24 writing positive. We don't expect anything positive from the South African meeting. But the people of the country, they know that the issues we are raising, they are standing with us. That's why they came in their number. So they can keep their apology.
And does this mean that the relationship between ANC Youth League as well as the media, News 24, will there be some kind of change in any way?
We don't have any relationship with them. We don't need them. But what we would not do, we will not do what other political parties do and say certain media houses must not come to our press conference. No, they can come, but we're just inviting them like we invite any other. We don't have any specific relationship with them.
Thank you very much. And then Andile Mngxitama, just coming back to you, hearing Colin Maine also as well saying that he does not accept the apology. What do you want to say right now?
No, I mean, what this story has shown is that the white-owned media in South Africa has lost all credibility. In fact, it has become what we must call the producers of fake news. They manufacture this news to achieve certain objectives which really are about defending white interest, white monopolist interest, and to make sure that South Africans don't know the truth of the fact that, for instance, our country is still white-owned, the fact that racism is serious, the fact that there's no transformation, the fact that they're blocking transformation. In fact, our media will not even say how Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank is being used to block black people from entering the mining and, in fact, the banking sector in particular. Because the banking sector in this country is run by the South African Reserve Bank, and the minister, the media will not tell us this, has got shares in these banks, and these banks are basically making sure there's no competition. These are the things that you'd have thought that the media would run with, but it wouldn't, because this media is white-owned and its narrative is white, and it's dangerous, therefore, for black people to uncritically accept what the media says. This story, I think, more than many others, clearly puts the argument beyond doubt that white-owned media is, in fact, producers of fake news. And if you just accept their news without investigating what the truth about them, you are misinforming yourself. That is why in this country today, black people are fighting each other. We are put in a position where we believe Jacob Zuma is the enemy. We're made to believe that the Gupta family is the enemy, when in fact, the problem in South Africa remains the historical problem of those who stole our land and those who control this economy, and those are what people call white monopoly capital. Until we have a narrative that counters the narrative of whiteness, we're going to sit in this situation where our parliament is a joke. You would have thought that the issues in parliament, for instance, that needs to the disruption of the president are substantive issues. Issues of the land redistribution, issues of free education, issues of proper minimum wage of 12,500, which the Marikana workers had died for. But those are not the real issues that we are preoccupied with. We are preoccupied with side issues, because the narrative which is run by the white media makes sure that it moves away our gaze or our focus from the sins of white capital in this country. So we are very happy to see that the young people on the ground no longer accept this narrative of whiteness, and that is why we're saying to South Africans, let us go out there, demand land, take land, demand money from ABSA, occupy ABSA, make sure that white capital does not operate as normal. That is the only way we can get some justice.